Albert Awol, the voice of the jungle, broadcasting on the DVC to all points unknown. If you're within the sound of my voice, you're listening to Welcome Home Podcast on the DVC.
Hello and welcome home. Thank you for joining us on episode 128 of Welcome Home, a Disney Parks and Vacation Club podcast. I'm Tom. I'm here with Trevor and Damon. How's it going, guys?
Pretty good for a Sunday. It's actually nice here for once.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Holiday weekend here. You had your holiday weekend last weekend.
Yeah, we did. And this weekend it didn't snow. So just to give you a perspective, it's actually funny. We've swung entirely the opposite direction where it's now feeling like summer. So we kind of skip spring, and that happens here all the time.
Well, oddly enough, here it was like 90 yesterday, and today it's in like the 60s. It's kind of flipped completely, which is Fahrenheit, of course. I know you're usually working on Celsius, but Fahrenheit, yeah. It was in the 90s yesterday. Now it's in the 60s, and it's a little chilly out today. It feels almost like fall. I'm assuming the same thing's happening up by Damon too. But
I wore a sweatshirt this morning. Yeah,
it's cold.
So you guys took my weather then. That's fine. You can keep it.
I mean, not snow, but I mean, it's chilly.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So yeah. So why don't we get right into it today? I hesitate to say this because I feel like this has never happened, but I feel like we don't have a ton of topics to talk about today. So I don't know how long this is going to go, but I always say that, and then we end up going way too long. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think the first thing is we just want to, well wishes to Kayla's Uncle Mark. I think he's been going through some stuff. There's a post in the group if anyone wants to check it out. So
yeah,
check that out. I appreciate the people that have been commenting on that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's been nice. So what were you going to say, Trevor? I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with Damon that, definitely make sure you guys go look at the post and, let Kayla's Uncle Mark know that he's got some support out there.
Yeah, definitely. We did also get a question via email, and I wanted to read because I appreciated the time that it took to write this out and just the nice sentiment of this. So Blake wrote us via email. Tom, Damon, and Trevor wanted to send you a quick note of thanks. I've been listening to your podcast for about 5 months. Pretty new listener, Blake is, which is great. At the beginning of the year, my wife and I, mostly me, were needing to lose weight. We are trying to come up with the usual, what do we reward ourselves with? I've been a huge Disney fan all my life and wanting to buy DVC since I met my wife, but she's always put the brakes on it because of the money. At the time, mid-January, I was up to 291 pounds and not healthy. And while we were talking, I came up with an extreme goal and reward. I said, what if I set a goal of getting down to 200 pounds? Could I buy DVC then? My wife thought a minute and said, if you lose 91 pounds, you can buy into DVC, and I won't say a word. And he says, game on. So fast forward to today, I've lost 50 pounds down to 241. I need to lose another 41 pounds before I buy into DVC for the first time. And I'm thinking I'll hit that goal around November or December. The reason I need to thank you is that one of the ways I've been losing weight to walk 6 miles every day, and your podcasts serve a crucial role in helping motivate me while I listen, to keep walking while I listen. Despite what Damon says, I feel like, Damon, you haven't complained about the long episodes, but but despite what Damon says, I like the long episodes as it keeps me from having to fumble around with my phone while I walk. Keep the long episodes coming. Thanks so much. Now here's his question. So
I mean, I don't remember necessarily complaining about the longest episode either. I mean, I just leave. So I mean, there's no complaints for me.
Yeah. David doesn't say anything. He's just gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I mean, listen, Blake, I appreciate you writing that in. It's nice to hear that we provide any sort of motivation for that. So that's really cool for sure. So, especially when you're working towards the goal of DVC. So here's a scenario that he wants to us to answer. I've just hit the magical reset button. You three still have all the knowledge and experience gained from your time as DVC members, but now all your contracts are gone and you own nothing in DVC. However, you now have the money you spent on DVC back in your bank accounts. This is your chance to completely start over fresh with no encumbrances. I like that word. It's a good one. Of where you already own. Assume there's availability at every DVC property. Knowing what you know now, how would you start over with DVC? Which resort or resorts, direct to resale or a mix? Anything you wish you had done differently other than I wish I had bought earlier? Thanks for the show. That's a good question. I like this question.
Okay, who wants to tackle this first?
Well, okay, I'll go first. So okay. I'll say that I would probably not have bought at Bay Lake Tower. Just because it's not that we don't like staying there. It's just we've only stayed there the one time, and I feel like we've stayed other places a lot more and enjoy other places a lot more. We like Bay Lake. It's just not our favorite. So I think we probably would have bought in somewhere else, maybe Animal Kingdom, or probably Animal Kingdom or something like that. And, so that's probably the big thing. But I also, and I found, obviously found this out later. I've talked about this before, how I didn't even know resale was an option when I bought my first contract. I probably still would have bought one contract direct just to get the benefits and then bought the rest resale like I've done a mix of it. But I probably would have done even more research than I'd done initially, really look at everything and figure out which was the best resort for me to buy into and the same use years. I definitely wouldn't have bought that other contract that was a different use year than my other two contracts. That was an annoying mistake that I made. So I definitely wouldn't have done that, but I probably just would have chosen a different home resort. What about you guys?
Okay, I'll go next. Yeah, so I think for myself, I wouldn't have changed how we bought in. Getting the direct contract at the Poly, that absolutely would stay. I would keep that there, but I would have adjusted the points. Or the one thing that we did change when we started staying at the Poly was we originally stayed in the standard view, and then when we realized we could get enough points to stay at the lake view, I prefer the lake view, obviously. So I would have made sure that I had enough points to factor in the lake view. Would have been the big difference. And then the only other thing I would have changed is if I could have bought into Grand Californian, I would have actually, because the problem is it's at a point now where even resale is hard to get, and I shouldn't say hard to get, but it's still a lot more expensive for what it is. But yeah, I would look into getting a Grand Californian contract, because at this point we're already talking about when the new DVC hotel opens up in California, we want to get to that scenario where we're basically alternating every year between Disneyland and Disney World. So that would be the only thing I would change, is getting some Grand Californian points.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one. What about you, Damon?
I don't think I would have changed resorts or anything like that. I mean, it was the resort that when we were ready to buy, I would probably just do the same thing. Whatever resort had the longest time, left on the contract, I would buy at whatever time I bought. I think the only thing that I probably would have done differently in the process is my second direct contract. I just probably would have bought more points. It's so easy to buy direct in terms of, it's not on your credit report, right? That's something that's really nice, especially if you're concerned about buying it and then having to buy other things like cars or houses or things like that. And the process is just extremely easy because it's all done in that Disney bubble, right? So while the pricing is a little bit more and the loan, the loan is a little bit higher, I think the ease of it just makes it, I would have bought more points. I bought 50 as my second contract, and I probably wish I had bought 100. But other than that, no, I would have stuck with direct just like I did. I don't think I would have changed anything like that.
Yeah, it was a good question. I really hadn't thought about that before, I guess, right? Going back and changing something like that.
Yeah, I think even, knowing everything that we know about resale, resale is definitely, I think it's great for adding on, but, I think you guys all agree that, having, buying that direct, at least, for the first or second contract, it kind of, getting the benefits and like Damon said, dealing with the Disney bubble, so to speak. I don't think I would ever change that. Yeah,
I get that. So who wants to read this Allison question?
I'll take that one. So Allison asks, which movies / IPs are overrepresented at Disney and which are underrepresented? Okay. Well, okay. Overrepresented. I would go
Mickey.
Is he though? He's only got the
Absolutely.
one ride. He's only got the one ride though. Everything. I know Mickey's on everything, but
on everything though. Yeah.
I was actually going to say Cinderella myself, and I think that's mainly because I I've said this before.
Because you have some hate there. You have some Cinderella hate.
I'm just not a fan of Cinderella. I don't like it. I've never liked the show, and yeah, I just feel that it gets way too much front and center.
Yeah.
The thing is you have to look at everything that's super duper classic, right? That has, stood up to the test of time. And those things have to stay, right? Like Cinderella, Snow White, Mickey.
Peter Pan. Yeah.
Cinderella, Snow White, Mickey. And I think that...
you don't put Peter Pan in there?
No, I do not. No,
it's not.
How do you not put Peter Pan in there?
Because it's not as classic as those. I'm sorry to tell you.
I mean, okay.
It's just not. Start asking people, again, outside of maybe what you've watched, and ask people, and they'll tell you they've seen Snow White and Cinderella. Not all of them have seen Peter Pan. But that being said, I think that there's that level of classic that needs to happen. And, while there's definitely shows that I think are far better and movies that are far better, just because they, it's like Gravity Falls. I mean, I think that's probably the best thing Disney has ever put out. But would it be smart to represent that in the park outside of, the Epcot, around the world, thing? Like, no, it wouldn't be smart. So it's very difficult, like underrepresented, overrepresented, what should be there. How many people love DuckTales? I don't even really, the original one I love, but the new one, like, it's okay. I mean, it's cool that they're doing something with it, but that's not everybody. So, they're kind of limited to this, greater common denominator.
I'd say in general, like the Disney Channel kind of properties are not well represented in the parks, right?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what Damon was saying. Is there's lots of shows over the years. There has been other shows, not necessarily to the same level of thought as Gravity Falls, but there has been a lot of those Disney Channel shows that, at various points they build up a lot of hype and they are very popular, but for whatever reason, and kind of to what Damon's saying, they don't want to put them in the parks because things do change quickly on Disney Channel. Like if you actually do look at the amount of shows that come out and that turnover on what's popular, they wouldn't be able to sustain that, I guess, is the first problem. And then, not what resonates with me doesn't resonate with the next person is the next problem.
Yeah.
I think, though, if it was represented in the ways that we see, we see the Phineas and Ferb and the DuckTales and smaller things like that would be interesting. But I think the cost that comes along with that is just a little too high, especially think about it. They did DuckTales while DuckTales was still kind of being produced. Like if you went back and did something with Gravity Falls, like you have to find all these people again to do that. I think a lot of the things they don't necessarily know how well they're going to do. I think that they were aware that DuckTales was going to do well regardless. And I think that's why they were able to accomplish something like that. And Phineas and Ferb just went on forever, I feel like. So that was easy to accomplish. But to bring everyone back, bring back Alex Hirsch for Gravity Falls to do something, like that's just not going to happen. So yeah. I wish it did. I wish there was a smaller venue for things like that as they were doing shows, but I don't think it could be anything large. It just wouldn't be cost effective.
Yeah. There's a Gravity Falls marathon going on Disney XD this weekend. We've been watching.
I think there always is.
Yeah. Well, no, there's they specifically have a marathon that they're advertising. That although they're saying they're doing it in order, and they absolutely are not doing it in order. So I don't know why they keep saying they're doing it in order when it's obvious they're not. But
so you have to remember, right? There's production order and airing order, and they're definitely different. And you'll realize that actually most of the Disney shows are actually aired out of production order. I don't actually remember a show that hasn't aired out of production order at least a few episodes. So what you may be seeing is just, they're going episode 101, 102, which is not how it originally came out.
Yeah, it's just weird because it doesn't make sense with the storyline sometimes. So, I mean, although we were watching, I don't know if maybe just the marathon didn't start until today or whatever, but it's never
not on.
It is.
I can tell you that
it's on a lot. Yeah.
Like I rewatched the mini golf one with the people that are golf balls. It's such a great episode.
It's a great one, yeah.
And again, I realized, like, man, this show is just really good. And you would think, even we know in our group when we started asking people, when we started doing the podcast, people were unaware of the show. And again, I would say it's probably Disney's crowning achievement in terms of animation. Yeah. Especially with a series. I don't think maybe you can talk movies, but I don't think there's another series that really comes close to that. Besides Amphibia, which again, I'm still, we gotta see how that ends.
Yeah, I keep seeing commercials for that during the
It's really good, man. It's really good.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I guess just to go back to the whole underrated, overrated thing. So outside of Gravity Falls, well,
we're not saying overrated, underrated, overrepresented, underrepresented.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. But I guess, is there any other show that you can think of outside of there? Like not even talking animation, but has there ever been another show that you can think of that you feel should have some representation in the park?
And so again, if we have to talk a little bit of classic, I guess we're talking classic movies. I don't love the way that I'm gonna be honest. I don't love the way that Toy Story is actually represented in general. Like I think it's definitely represented. There's no doubt about that. But I don't love the way it's represented. I think there could have been more there. I think like the kind of the cool things that exist in Toy Story are just not out in the open enough when there's a land, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know. I think the rides are fine, but I wish the land was more like Star Wars like. It
more
doesn't
like
feel
immersive,
that,
more like
the land doesn't really feel that immersive. I'll be honest with you, and I think that's such a huge IP that I felt like maybe there should have been a little bit more immersion in that land. I don't know.
Could we say Pixar in general is overrepresented because it's like everywhere?
But is it
Pixar
though?
Overall?
I mean, I'm trying to think how like. Okay, park by park. Like obviously, Hollywood Studios has a lot.
Every park has something that has Pixar.
Okay, but how overrepresented is it though? Like in Magic Kingdom, okay, we've got Buzz Lightyear,
Buzz,
which again, like I said,
what else?
They need to fix that ride and make it better.
They need to give you the Disneyland guns. The Disneyland guns are way better.
Yeah, the guns are terrible in that, and they work like half the time. That ride has been falling apart, I feel like, for like 10 years, so they need to fix that thing.
Totally overrepresented as an IP, but totally not represented correctly.
Okay.
So like Buzz Lightyear ride in general, like it could have been so much more.
But you see some of the other versions of it. Yeah, some of the other versions are great. Sorry, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, that's my point. Is there's only one ride that you can think of in Magic Kingdom that is Pixar related, and that's Buzz Lightyear. And then going to Epcot and Animal Kingdom, where
I agree, Trevor.
And then Nemo.
Bugs Life isn't even Pixar. Like it is, but it's like it is, but it's not.
It's one of those fading IPs. But again, the point is that you've got Okay, so Up and Tough to Be a Bug are the only two in Animal Kingdom. I wouldn't call that overrepresented. I mean, they're honestly that's leaning more
Pixar,
towards under.
Finding Nemo the musical,
because Pixar is their money at this point. I would. think.
Yeah. Although Disney Animation's been doing pretty well lately.
Yeah. I mean, Frozen and Moana and stuff.
Yeah. And Wreck-It Ralph is that's even Disney Animation, right? So like even if they put Wreck-It Ralph in Tomorrowland, that's still going to be Disney. I was just throwing it out there. I wasn't necessarily saying I think that they're overrepresented, but you could probably make that case more at Disney California Adventure, right? Like that's because the whole Pixar area.
But. Well, Pixar Pier is kind of it's kind of an analog to Toy Story Land. Like they've kind of. I guess the thing is Pixar has its own section, but having its own section doesn't mean that it's too much in the parks. Like
sure.
I guess the way I was looking at it was like I said Cinderella because. Sorry, but obviously she's got the castle in the middle of the park, and it seems like everywhere you go, there is always like Cinderella stuff, and she's in the parades and all that.
But so who would you say is a more important princess for Disney?
Well, Sleeping Beauty is the original.
Yeah, but I mean, Sleeping Beauty. Again, forget about who the original is. I mean, what's more important though? Who do more people know? Like, I think Cinderella is just iconic. You know, she's the Beyonce of Disney.
Now,
like
I'm not a fan of Beyonce either, but
but I mean, not the first, but probably the best. And no one doesn't know who Beyonce is. It's the same sort of analogy.
Yeah, everybody knows who Cinderella is, right?
Yeah, I would say that again. Like, I think that the problem that I have with this is there's just so much in terms of IP, and ride development just takes forever.
Yeah.
And you're just never going to represent an IP unless you're talking about movies that are making a ton of money, that don't go anywhere, and there's more than one, right? That's why we don't see a lot of stuff until, we get either that classic status, or you get some spin-offs or some, second movies and things like that.
Well, that's why it took so long to get Frozen stuff, right? I mean, Frozen was a gigantic hit, right? If Disney could have Disney did not expect that movie, I think, to be a huge hit, right? So then it was, and then it took years to put, it takes years to develop rides and then build them and, all that. I mean, it takes a long time to get that going. So now you've got whole lands that are being built in some of the other parks around Frozen, but, it took some time to get there.
Yeah, because, Frozen's not going anywhere. Like, kids as they come up are still going to do Frozen. May not have the popularity of when it was first introduced, but it will be part of that watching cycle. I think that, the original characters are probably still underrepresented in terms of, like, what does Pluto actually have?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the only thing I can think of that like Donald has is like basically what Mickey's PhilharMagic, right? That's pretty much the only thing Donald does anything with.
Yeah, that's true. And
I mean, Goofy's got his coaster, but that's does that even count?
Not really, right?
I wouldn't be proud of that, but
listen, I guess if you're using that as your first coaster introduction, it's a great idea. But that's, people have to, I think when the Imagineers sat down, maybe that was what they thought. But then you have to realize it's Disney and everyone's going to want to go on it, even if you're saying that it's an introduction coaster for kids. And I think that's where it kind of fails a little bit.
Yeah, I get that.
I think the other thing that fails it as well, so they have the same coaster in Disneyland, but it's Gadgets Go Coaster. So it was based on Rescue Rangers back in the 90s. And, it's still gadgets, but again, theming does go a long way in these cases as well, because even though Gadgets is also a very short coaster, it has a lot more interesting stuff going on in the ride area.
As soon as you said Gadget, I thought Inspector Gadget. I wasn't thinking Rescue Rangers Gadget.
Because I don't think a lot of people know Rescue Rangers either. Like, unless you grew up in that time frame, why would you? Now that the movie's going to be out, right? That's a different story. I tell people gummy bears and they're like, what are you talking about? I think from an underrepresented point too, now that we've lost the Indiana Jones show, Indy is huge, right? And that's totally underrepresented at this point, at least in, the world.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with that. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of IPs that probably, a lot of people love certain, there's certain fandoms for certain things of, that people really, really love and they think should be represented more. But, Disney obviously is only going to do certain things that they think are popular and successful, right? So even if you love, what was that movie that everybody loves, but did like bombed at the box office? I'm trying to think. I mean, even like Emperor's New Groove, people love this. So there are people that love that movie, but didn't do well. So Disney's not going to do anything with it. Or what's the Treasure one? Why am I blanking on the name of
Treasure Planet?
Is that what it is? I don't remember. There are people that love that movie too.
Or Atlantis, yeah. Yeah, I mean
Atlantis,
those Yeah, and you're right, there's definitely been a lot of movies that, you see them and you feel like it should have that status but never does. But, also I'll use Little Mermaid as an example too. What you were saying, Damon, about, rides having to hit or IPs having to hit that classic state. The Little Mermaid ride came out 20 years after the show, like
might even be longer than that.
I think it might even be. I don't remember when Little Mermaid originally came out, but yeah, they did the ride, And, it was way after the show came out. So, I guess part of it too is, when we first see these shows and we're like, yeah, I want this to be in the park. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why not. But then also, even something like The Emperor's New Groove, even though it bombed in the box office, you can still find stuff relating to it every once in a while. And it seems to kind of pop its head up every now and then. Yeah. But, yeah, it kind of takes it, either coming around a second time or, hitting that, I don't want to call it cult status, but it kind of is, I guess. It has to hit that status of being, something that so many people are talking about that Disney can't ignore it. Like even Little Mermaid, I really don't think that they had thought when they, obviously did the show, back then they weren't thinking about, how can we turn this into a ride? It was definitely like way later somebody had the idea of, hey, maybe we should make a ride about this show in the parks because, there's so many kids out there that, even 20, 30 years later are still talking about Ariel. So
I like when they do original stuff though too, and I feel like now they just have so much IP that it's almost like they can't just do original stuff anymore. But it's almost like a bad business decision at this point not to tie something to an IP because they've so much IP.
But here's the question though. If they've released a movie and it's their IP and they do a ride on it, is that still not original?
No, see, because I'm looking at it as like the things that are original to the park, like that just exist in the park, like the Jungle Cruise, or which I mean, I guess the movie's coming out, but but it just didn't exist. I like the ones that, or even Figment, right? That didn't really exist outside of the park. I mean, it did. I guess it did at one point. I think there was a cartoon briefly, but it was something that was original to the park and nowhere else. I like that kind of stuff. I like when they have the original stories and it's not just tied to an IP. I mean, but at the same time, I also understand the need to tie things to an IP. Like, I get it. Like, I'm not besmirching that idea. I think it's a good idea. It's a good business idea to tie all that stuff together, right? Especially with Disney Plus now, because it's like a cycle, right? Disney Plus can drive people to the parks, or the parks can drive people back to Disney Plus. Like that's they're doing this all in together, and it makes a lot of sense. But I also like when they come up with like original storylines and things like that.
So here's an interesting bit to think about with that. Is I know what you're saying about, I wish they would just do something original and unique to the park. But even like when those classic rides like Pirates and Haunted Mansion stuff were being built, Disney had, there was that show where they were talking about the development of Disneyland, right? So they were advertising these rides ahead of time. They were getting people, they were building hype so that people, if they just dump them into the park and were like, here's a ride, people don't know what to do with that. They like, I know at this point, a lot of people will just show up at Disney and like, go, anything new they'll go and try. But, I think there's still something in their business model that says, hey, we're not going to put something in the park unless we have a means of advertising it, and not just like, saying, hey, at the front gate, there's a new ride, go see it. Even back then, Disney was advertising this stuff ahead of time, saying, even Sleeping Beauty's Castle, same thing. There was a movie tied to it before the park opened. And I think, I know what you're saying, but I don't think you'll ever get away from, it makes the most sense to, release a movie, see how people feel about it, and then decide to go that next step, versus the other way of, spending a lot of money on a ride that, doesn't work, and then, nobody rides it. So.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. It makes sense.
I don't think there'd ever be a ride at Disney that nobody rides, right?
True.
I mean, and I feel like you could always do it the other way around, right? If they put a ride out, they could always make a movie. I think that they're pretty smart over there to make a movie about anything.
Right? Yeah, you're right. And at this point, they're already doing that, right?
There could be a very good Swiss Family Robinson movie. Like new.
Oh, you don't
right?
like the original?
They could do that. It's okay. But like they could do that, right? The original doesn't resonate with people that are going to the park now, I don't believe. So I don't know if one's in development, but I'm sure that there probably is somewhere, somehow. And I mean, they could always do that. I mean, there could be a Tiki Room movie, right? No one's stopping that. I didn't think they could.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can make movies out of any of that. I mean, I really was struggling with how they were going to make a Jungle Cruise movie, but now that I've seen like the trailers, I'm like, all right, I see what they did here, and I'm interested. I'm definitely interested in watching it. So, all right.
Anyway, we kind of went down a long rabbit hole there.
Yeah.
So
See, this is what happens every time I say that we don't have a lot to talk about. We end up talking about one topic for 10 minutes, and
yeah.
I think we talked about this before, but I think this is always a good topic to bring up. Jody said, if the Star Wars hotel does well, do you think we could see Disney do another all-inclusive themed hotel experience? If so, what could it be?
No, I don't think so. I think there's the management of that and the... No, I don't think so. I think that if this is it, this is it. This is what we're going to get.
Well, I think the problem is you need like a crazy, like rabid fan base to do something like this, and you have that with Star Wars. And the only other one I can think of that has a rabid fan base like that is Harry Potter, and Disney obviously does not have that. So, Star Wars, I think, is the only really IP you could do this with.
Yeah,
that I can think of anyway. I mean, I can't think of any
and then the other problem too is, like you said, if you open up another hotel, there's a certain amount of back end resources that it takes to keep something like that functioning. And I guess the concern I could see is that if they started doing different experiences, it dilutes the whole thing overall.
Sure.
Right. So,
yeah. And I mean, I guess too, like you also, to go back to that. So, okay, Avatar was at one point the highest grossing movie of all time, right? There's a lot of reasons for that, whatever. But you don't have like people that are, an Avatar hotel would maybe be cool. There's probably some cool stuff.
Dude, the land is stupid. Why would I need a hotel?
The land is not stupid. It's
the land is pretty stupid.
But I'm just saying there are people that love those movies. And part of it is you have to continue, appealing to the current generation, which is part of why Star Wars works, because they're going to keep producing Star Wars stuff, right? Star Wars stuff's going to keep coming out, keep hooking in that new generation that watches the old movies and, that kind of thing. So Star Wars works for that. I just don't know what other IP you could really use.
At least within Disney. I mean, I guess technically if you're going to go down, the road of, hey, long-standing IPs, they do own Marvel and,
Yeah, last we checked, right?
Yeah.
And
the Marvel...
Now that would be cool.
The Marvel universe could turn into something like this.
Dude, give me the Shield airship as the hotel.
Okay.
That might be kind of cool.
You know what? That's fair. I hadn't really thought about Marvel, but yeah.
Think about it. It's a shame that they couldn't do it in California.
Yeah.
But that would be kind of cool. Yeah. Imagine if you could make it like a real airship, like they could do it so it's like in the air, even though it's not flying all the time, kind of like they did with the Avatar, stupid mountains. But like something like that, where like you take an elevator up to it and it's kind of in the air. That would be kind of cool.
You gave me a hard time about complaining about Dr. Pepper Zero. You're saying, what about the people that made that? What about you besmirching all the work
Marvel?
that took place on those floating mountains and all? I mean, it took them years of work to do that. What about all the people that designed those, Damon?
Yeah, they did a terrible job. No, I just don't. I don't like it. I think that I think Avatar is pretty stupid in general. Sorry, James Cameron.
Sorry, James Cameron. Well, and they are going to have a bunch more of those movies coming out. But to your point, I almost feel like you could do more with Marvel than with Star Wars, even, because there's so many characters and there's so many different things going on. There's so many interesting things they could do with that,
The challenging thing with Marvel is that it's been around longer than Star Wars, because, both of them were absorbed into Disney over time. But, Marvel is a much older institution than Star Wars, but the challenge lies in that over time, stories have been rewritten, characters have been redone. And I know we're getting Disney's new take on it with the current Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I guess from an interactivity standpoint, people will go in, and I'm sure this already happens now, is, people will look at a certain character and they'll go off of something that they remembered from, Spider-Man, he said this to this person or whatever. And, if you're talking about an immersive experience, people...
Alternate universe and you're done. That's all you have to do there.
Yeah, but it's getting everybody involved in it to keep the continuity. Like it becomes a dangerous thing when you're talking about multiple universes, and it's I can see.
I don't know how it's any different though than seeing characters in Star Wars. I mean, it's not like they're not going to have some big boy characters at that hotel. They will.
Yeah, I just feel that with Star Wars, I shouldn't say they've better controlled it. They've done a better job of keeping all the weird sideline stuff out of the spotlight, I guess, is the big thing.
Yeah, I just think that makes it easier though, because then again, you can what if it, you can alternate universe. I mean, you're going to already be, people are going to understand what if is, even if they never read the comics, which are some of my favorite Marvel comics, to be honest with you. But they're going to know what, WandaVision has opened that all up. So I don't know. I think it actually becomes a little bit easier because you just go pocket universe, done.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I guess they can't explain themselves out of any bag at this point, can't they?
Yeah. But if all of a sudden Darth Vader shows up, everyone's going to be like, what the heck? Like, thought he was dead. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah, Marvel, I feel like such a good. I don't know why I didn't think of Marvel.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I said, now that we're talking about it, if you think about it, everyone goes, "Oh, why are they doing Marvel?" Marvel's been around longer than Star Wars. Like it's
like quite a bit longer.
It's up there with Marvel and DC are like the two titans in terms of comics and superhero characters and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how, like, if you opened up that kind of experience, I think it would get the same kind of pull as Star Wars.
Because again, there's like so many things you can do with it, right? Like you do you could do a lot of the similar things you're doing with the Star Wars hotel, right? Because you could do like superhero training and like, I feel like although the Marvel one feels to me like it would almost be geared more towards kids than the Star Wars one.
No, see, I would say that you're talking the opposite.
You think so?
I think and that's where the problem would be with the Marvel one is that, who are you really catering to? Like, have you seen what is, I just happened to turn it on because I was going through, watching a lot of animation on Hulu. What is it? The MODOK one?
Oh, yeah. I haven't watched it yet, but yeah, it looks funny. Yeah.
I mean, again, like I'm kind of out, right? I'm in on Marvel from when I was growing up and then it kind of got too crazy and I was out. But like even watching that, I mean, they're catering towards adults, Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, that show especially, yeah.
But I mean, even with the other stuff, like that's on television, a lot of it is catered towards adults, where I feel like Star Wars has gone the opposite way and started catering towards kids at least a little bit more. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Why don't we leave it there? Because it's, we could probably talk about that for another hour.
Gosh, I always think we're going to go short and then we go long. So our new friend Kurt from Geekin' on WW asked a question. He said Tom did a great job spoiling his wife on his last trip. Describe a great day at Disney World, including resort, park, food, and activities for just you and your wife.
Okay.
I just kind of did mine, so
yeah,
yeah,
just me and my wife. So that's a really hard thing to think about right now because my wife and I we have no desire to go there without our son at this point. Like we're in that mode where it's like it has to be family or nothing. So, I guess if it was just us, I mean, I would say, I would probably do a lot of the same things that I do now with my son. Like I wouldn't change the core of my Disney trip. Like we would still do fireworks shows. We would still do, obviously stay in the same hotel. I mean, I don't think it's any different than what I'm doing now.
I mean, like, we did like a nice dinner and all that kind of stuff that we wouldn't necessarily do with my daughter. Like we wouldn't take her to a really nice restaurant like that. But I like I said, I think I just kind of did mine. So, so do we want to just move on to Rob's question then?
Yeah, sure.
Rob didn't ask this in the official question by the in the group. I just pulled this out of the group, a question he asked everybody because I thought it was a good question.
Okay. Do you want here? I'll
go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, read it.
So Rob says we have a trip coming up in July. This is our first time going in the middle of summer and our first time without strollers. We're considering bringing a stroller just to hold our stuff, but like the idea of not having to worry about picking it up. How do you all make the transition as your kids get older? We still want to bring water, at least since it's hot. Just a backpack or two. Don't buy anything until the end of the day, or send it back to the resort or the front of the park. Like he's asking for, how do you manage, going around the parks and, you're not just going to be with what you have with you. You're going to, kids want to buy stuff. And then, you want to carry, the usual stuff, water, ponchos, stuff like that. For us, the way that we did it, and I purposely chose not to take my son or we started with Disneyland, and we didn't take him until we knew he was old enough to be out of a stroller for a day. So it wasn't until he was about 4 years old that we took him on his first trip. Honestly, I think for that first trip, I kind of wish that I did take a stroller because I ended up carrying him a lot of the time. Which wasn't a bad thing. It just, would have been easier with the stroller. As far as how do you manage stuff? In my family, the way that we did it for the longest time was we had the central backpack that my wife and I handed off to each other throughout the day. So it meant that we weren't, one or the other wasn't killing our backs. And we had a couple of water bottles in there. As my son's gotten older, we've transitioned to, we all take small day packs now. So this is something to think about, is that, for a little while, you'll probably want to have a larger backpack for sure. And, obviously you're not going to have your kid carrying their own backpack, but in a couple of years, you may want to get them used to the idea of them carrying their own bag, because then that means, one, they can carry their own water and stuff like that. The other part about, how do you manage buying stuff, there's two things that you can do there. So one, if you're staying at a resort, it's definitely easy. As long as it's not your last day, you can have stuff sent back to the rooms, because it takes them about a day to get things taken back there. So we've done that where, like my son's found something that he really wants in Pirates of the Caribbean. And so we bought it and sent it back to the room, and then, picked it up, you actually end up having to go down to the front desk and pick it up later. The other thing that I would recommend is, set some, I established some guidelines with my son very young that, we would always leave our shopping day until the end of the trip. So, like I said, obviously stuff does come up that you feel like you have to buy in the moment, but I think it's also good to, explain to your kids, hey, you'll see stuff as you're going through these shops and whatever. Part of it is that, one, it stops them from, wanting to buy every single thing. And two, the things that they really care about, if they really want them, and you say, at the end of our trip, we will do all of our shopping for souvenirs, that will make them stick in their head the stuff that they actually care about, and not buy a bunch of, things that, in the moment were cool, but then they never touch again. Right. So I kind of like, or that's the kind of the way that we plan our trips is, it's one, keeping small bags and getting used to the idea of everyone carrying their own bags, but then also, everyone agreeing that we're not going to do our shopping until, second last or last day of the trip. And then that way people actually buy stuff that they really want, because again, it also gives you a chance to think about it, over the trip, did I really want that lightsaber, or was it just like in the moment I was all hyped up about Star Wars, right?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. For me, I guess I just, I haven't abandoned the stroller yet, but it was nice on my last trip to not have one. It is, because it is a pain, but I understand the idea of like holding stuff in there and, having, it is nice for that. But like you said, we have the central backpack too, right? We've got the same thing, and I think that's what a lot of people do. But I think this question is almost more for you guys, just because you guys are transitioned away from this already, and I'm not. So
I don't know. I did an umbrella stroller for a while. It made it easy. Getting stuff I don't really worry about. We don't bring a lot of stuff with us. If we're going to buy something, we usually buy it right before we leave. So I don't really necessarily worry about that. I think you should take a stroller for as long as you can. I mean, because it makes it easier. It makes it more enjoyable for the kids if they have the opportunity to rest. So,
yeah,
especially in the hot sun.
Like I said, that was my big mistake on our first trip was, we took him without a stroller, and we realized by the end of the second day that he was really tired. And so the rest of the trip was, I was either, I was that, parent carrying my kid on the shoulders down Main Street, or I was just, had him in my arms walking around, which, by the end of the trip, my arms were sorer than they should have been. And I would have saved myself that if I had brought a stroller. So
yeah, exactly. All right, let's go ahead and do our ad, and then we'll do the rest of the show. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
All right. So this week we have an ad for DVC Rental Store. We just saw some nice feedback in the group about DVC Rental Store, so thanks for posting that in the group. The DVC Rental Store, a World of DVC company, offers magical vacations at incredible value. Save up to 60% off retail rates at premium Disney resorts. DVC Rental Store now includes deposits as low as 25% at the time of booking and a built-in cancellation policy for every reservation. And as always, DVC Rental Store pays out the most to members looking to rent their points. Want to learn more? Go to dvcrentalstore.com or call 1-855-DVC-RENT. That's 1-855-382-7368. And of course, let them know the Welcome Home sent you once you call them. All right. Let's go to the next thing.
Yeah. So this DVC news, this is just a rumor at this point, right?
This is just a rumor, but we'll find out in a couple days if it's true or not.
Yeah. So the rumor is on Tuesday, June 3rd, so a day after this. I can't read today. Thursday, June 3rd, so a couple of days after this podcast comes out, that they're going to up the minimum direct purchase to 150 points. So over the last couple of years, they've stepped up they went from 50, 75, 100, and the last one was 125. And the speculation is that they're going to go up to 150 points, which for direct perks, that's becoming quite steep, I think. I mean,
with not very many perks available at the moment.
Yeah, and further to that is, that what some of the perks of direct membership are being able to buy annual passes and Moonlight Magic, which neither of those are being offered right now. So I don't
expect that to be temporary, though, right? I mean, I assume that those things are all going to come back at some point, I looking at it now, it feels like there's not very many perks, but I mean, there are things that can come back for sure. But
well, true. The promise of maybe getting something, I don't think is a good selling point.
Well, true. I mean, but I don't expect Moonlight Magic to not come back. Like, I assume that will be back, and I assume that, the annual passes, once those are available for sale again, I assume that Disney DVC members will continue to get that. Get the discount there. So it's just, temporarily not good. But I also view this through the lens of them getting ready to sell more Grand Floridian too, right? They're going to, part of it is Grand Floridian coming online. I saw another article too that they actually took down the pricing for Grand Floridian from the website. So maybe they're getting ready to do that.
But I guess the thing is that if, like this goes back to what I was saying about, for 150 points, these perks, like if I was buying a 50 point contract and they said, here are the perks for it, that's definitely, getting access to these events, getting annual passes, that makes sense. At 150 points though, I feel like somebody new coming into it, I don't see how they would see the value in that necessarily. Like, it's
because there's definitely, if you have resale, you don't have the original, right? Forget about the perks for a second. There's an ease of use and an ease of purchase that can supersede anything else. And it's why I do it, because I don't want to wait on right of first refusal. I don't want to think about any of that stuff. It's a pain. I don't want to have to worry about going to a secondary company if I want to take a loan. I don't want to do any of that. So while the perks are definitely, a benefit, I would have done direct anyway because I want it to be easy for me. Like, that process needs to be easy, and no one makes it as easy as Disney does.
No, that's a fair point. I guess. And I guess the thing is that there is. And
I want the lounge. Yeah, I want the lounge forever.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but again,
I feel like they can't take that away at this point. Like, people would be mad if you took that away. Like, really mad.
It would probably be the only thing that would make me mad. Would be that.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Trevor.
Yeah, but I guess, that's also, they're saying that that's the minimum to get the perks. There's nothing saying that somebody couldn't buy direct and not have to, spend 150 points. Although, yeah, I don't know. I feel like
there's a minimum first purchase.
Is there?
Yeah. You can't just roll in and buy 25 points as your first purchase, I don't believe.
Well, no, this would be the fifth. This is the minimum, right? So this is the direct minimum is 150 points.
Well, no, so that's your first purchase minimum, regardless.
Yeah, now you can do add-ons after that I think that don't have to be 150, but the minimum direct purchase is 150.
Yep.
So, that's okay.
Yeah.
Hey, be part of the club or don't. That's what they're telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I guess, again, this is their way of saying, they don't want to have too many people in the club because
it does feel like this would drive more people to resale, right? I mean, this, which is weird to me that they would want to do that, especially with DVC not selling great the past year, as far as direct goes. The resale market is hot as can be, but the direct market has been kind of, it's been whatever. And so it's odd to me that they're making this kind of move when, I feel like it will be less sales, not more sales. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm thinking with it too, is, they don't really have, I know you're right, Damon, that the perks shouldn't be the only reason to buy, but with the way things are right now, Disney's not doing themselves any favor by upping the direct minimum because
I don't think it makes a difference, man. I just don't. Either you're buying at Disney or you're not. I don't think that number makes a huge difference. And the people, like, you guys were saying, I mean, some people don't even know about resale. I don't know, man. The ease of use is worth that extra money to me, even in calling in and, again, right, doing everything online. Like, I know people complain sometimes about resale and the fact that sometimes you have to call in for certain stuff, right? Especially if you have multiple contracts. Like, there's none of that nonsense going on and you buy direct. Like, it's easy. It's just easy. I like easy. My time is worth something.
No, I know what you're saying. To your point, like when a lot of people walk in and they, the first time they take that meeting, they don't know anything about the minimum, and I'm sure the advisor's not going to go like, make a big deal of it.
It was 125 last week, but I'm going to sell it to you for 150 now.
Yeah, they're just going to go, oh, we could get you set up with this contract at Grand Floridian for 150 points, and they give them the numbers. Like, there's no discussion of that. So like you would hope people would come into that educated, but most people don't, right? Most people don't know about DVC until you go and do the meeting and talk about it more there. So you're probably right about that, Damon. It's like if people are going to buy, they're going to buy, right? It doesn't matter what the minimum is. It's more about the people that are already in it that know about more details about DVC already. And of course, this is not going to affect as far as we know, that current blue card holders are going to be grandfathered in. So I think that's going to continue. I don't think that would change, but who knows? Maybe it could, but I don't think it would. But yeah, it's just an interesting move by them, and maybe it's maybe it's partly because of what Derek was saying too about Grand Floridian, about how they couldn't. There was nothing that Disney could do to slow down those being sold. They were selling so fast that it was They kept raising the price and it was selling like crazy. So maybe Disney sees that too and is going that way. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, if they know that they're going to have a big push on Grand Floridian coming up here, they could be. Yeah, it could be a little bit of controlling it so that it doesn't sell out immediately, but also knowing darn well that people will buy what they'll buy.
Well, and because we're not all that far off from them reselling Grand Floridian again. It's going to be fairly soon. They're doing this refurb pretty quickly. It's happening. It's going to be done by next summer. I mean, they're going to be selling that before you know it. And so yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see if this actually comes true. Again, just keep in mind, people, that this is a rumor. Nothing is confirmed yet, but the speculation is that as of Thursday, you'll see the increase. So
we'll be able to verify that in a couple days.
Yeah, and I guess to that end is I went through this when they changed the rules around Riviera. That we bought our contract just before they changed that you couldn't use a resale to stay at the newer resorts. So, I think that could be part of it too, is that, anybody who's on the fence right now, if they see that a price increase is coming, it may prompt some quick sales as well, right?
That's true. That's also true. Yeah. All right. So Disney has put out a new patent about virtual queues with the intent to replace standby lines altogether, it seems. So I think this is interesting. Like, I'm reading through the patent doesn't really give me a lot of view into what this actually does, right? But it's an interesting thought about, actually replacing queues completely and doing it in a way that would work. I just don't. I mean, I don't know if I want that.
Where does everyone go?
That's the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That's where I think the problem is. Listen, I am not adverse to waiting online. Right. I think actually we've had some pretty fun times in line. Do I want to wait in line for everything? No, but waiting in line is not the end all be all, right? Again, you get a little family time. You get to play some heads up. Who doesn't play heads up in line? And, maybe you talk to some people prior to COVID that are in line with you. If they do this everywhere, everyone's just going to be walking around the park all day.
Well, that's what we talked about that before. Like,
it's
lines
terrible.
are people eaters, right? They hold a lot of people. So the parks feel busier right now because people are not in the lines; they're just out on the roadways, out on the streets, like waiting for the ride.
So I like the idea and the thought, and then I don't like it both at the same time. I think that's the problem. I don't know if that's the way to be, unless you do something else, unless you make something else happen where these people are going.
So you bring up a good point that, lines are people eaters, but what if you don't need those spaces anymore? What else could you do with those spaces? Because, a lot of queues like Peter Pan had, that whole, walkway back behind stuff? Well, not just the interactive stuff, but there's that, like, back behind Peter Pan, that whole area, like, as you're walking down past or towards, Haunted Mansion, that's all queue there. Like that whole walkway could be expanded. You could take all of that space that was formerly used for lines and you could repurpose it, right?
But the thing about lines is it's about immersion at the end of the day. Without lines, where's the immersion? I think what I'd like a little bit better is that there's some sort of virtual queue that allows them to mitigate 4-hour lines, right? So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, there's a virtual queue and the line may still be an hour, but that's all you're going to get. And maybe that helps mitigate, because at the end of the day, those people that wait on 8-hour lines, like, you're not taking that many people away from the park because they're sitting in one space and that's just one line, right? I think that maybe if you mitigate it so that you allow me to only have to wait for an hour when I go, rather than, and again, maybe sometimes where it's not as high that goes down to 20 minutes. But if they cap the max of waiting by a virtual queue, then I can kind of get on board.
Yeah. And maybe that's you're right. Maybe that's more what this is approaching is, I remember when Avatar opened up, the queue for it was ridiculous. Like, the people lined up all the way outside of, into Africa from where Flight of Passage was. If they can avoid that would definitely go a long way towards, perception of being too busy in the park, right? Like I know what you're saying, Damon, is, sometimes getting in line and just, chilling out in the line, so to speak, it gives you a bit of a break as well, because you're not running here and there and you're not on a ride or feeling like, you have to get to the next ride. If they could control that to a point where the ride never exceeds a certain amount of time, that would and maybe what it is that, once the ride hits a certain point, maybe they, they have something there where, it's like, hey, scan this QR code and we'll get you in line, but you'll come back an hour later or whatever, right? Like maybe
that's a good point. Like, it's not all the time, it's only at certain times.
Yeah. Like once a ride passes a certain threshold, then it becomes a virtual queue, right?
It's interesting. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Well, and at the same time, even if you have the virtual queue, right? And you learn this when you go on Rise of the Resistance, like even with the virtual queue for Rise of the Resistance, you're still in line for like a little while. Like once they call you, we were still in line for like 15 minutes and having to walk through the whole standby area. So like we still were in line, just we weren't in line for 4 hours. We were in line for 15, 20 minutes instead of, the whole long thing. So I think that's an interesting thought. I don't think that this is something they're going to use for everything. I think it's more of something they would use for, like you said, for some of the more popular rides, for some of the rides that get the really long lines, that kind of thing. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
And yeah, I think there does have to be a bit of a balance there. Like honestly, like to your point, Damon, I don't mind being in line for like Space Mountain, because Space Mountain's queue is interesting. Like I know they've taken out the game that was in the middle of it, but even outside of that, there's stuff to look at. It's got an atmosphere and an environment to it. It's not, there's a vast difference between standing in line for Space Mountain and then when you go to Disneyland and you stand in line for Peter Pan. That is the worst queue ever. And for anyone who's been to Disneyland knows what I'm talking about, is that queue was designed back in the 50s. And everything is very narrow. You're packed in. It's outside, so there's nothing to do. Like it's not like the one in Disney World I think they have added the interactive stuff since we were there last. Like they kind of built something off to the side for it. But I remember being there and it was just like, oh God, I could do without standing in this line for 45 minutes plus. Because there's nothing to the line. If they found that balance between being able to go and, the queue being part of that interactive experience leading up to the ride. And that still takes, 30 minutes or an hour, but, you're not having to wait in line for another hour on top of that just to get to that point. This system definitely looks like it could help address that. And then, like I said, I think it also does lend itself to, them rethinking some of these rides and how they have done the queues, because, again, Peter Pan, just because it's an easy example, is, there's a section of it that is interactive and immersive, but then, there's that whole overflow section, which is just, if there's too many people, you're basically just stuck in a back corner going through a bunch of switchbacks to get to the rest of the queue, right? So if they don't need those spaces as much because virtual queue is managing it, to me, that implies that, there's actually a lot more space in the parks that could be utilized for other things. Like not just necessarily widening a walkway or whatever, but, they could fit in smaller interactive areas or something like that where these queues were, right?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thought there. I mean, maybe I'm also just like looking at this like, okay, so what does this mean for FastPass, right? Like, does it mean FastPass won't exist anymore? Will it exist in tandem with this? I mean, because really, if you think about it, FastPass is in a way just a virtual queue, right? They're timing everybody out for a certain amount of time. They're saying, this window, this many people in this window, this many people in this window. It's not all that different than a virtual queue. So I do wonder how that affects FastPass, but we don't really know what FastPass is going to look like when it comes back, or if it does come back. So
I would actually like it if they took away the 60-day fast passes because of something like this.
Yeah.
You're right. It really is facilitating that, but because it turns into a game of, if you're, it's the same problem with Rise of the Resistance, right? Is, if you're not there, right at the start, you miss out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess maybe the thinking is, if everything's a fast pass, then, nobody has
that's even necessary.
Yeah, nobody needs to complain about not having fast passes, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and virtual queues are one of those things, and this kind of leads into the next topic where the Disney CEO Bob Chapek was talking about the park pass system and the virtual queues and saying that they're here to stay. And virtual queues are. It's interesting because some people absolutely hate the whole Rise of the Resistance thing and other people really like it. I found it to be a fine experience, maybe because I got a reservation and it wasn't that difficult to do. Maybe I would be more frustrated with it if I had not gotten it. I don't know. But it is interesting that people are very split on that, where some people really hate the idea of a virtual queue and some people really like it.
I think what we're seeing with that is, obviously it's an evolution of park management and queue management and everything. And, I can see where people would be split on it because not everybody is necessarily, it's not a matter of being, I guess, technology savvy, but a matter of, wanting to do it, right? Like some people don't want to, their idea is, I just want to go and get on the ride. Like, why do I have to pull out my phone? Why do I have to do this? I just want to get on the ride. But then, the problem with that is that enough people with that thinking is why we had 4-hour lines. So, because it's, people they didn't want to think about, hey, I could come back later. I could do this, at this time. They were just, nope, I want to get on this ride right now. I'll stand in line for 4 hours for it. I think it's going to be, it's going to take a little bit of time for people to adjust to it. And you're always going to have people that, don't like it. But I also think, Disney's probably learned a lot in the last year that, obviously with these patents coming out and them continuing to use the system, I'm sure that they realized that, hey, the level of control that they have over being able to limit the park experience means a better park experience for everyone overall. The trade-off is there was always the complaint, hey, the park is too busy. There's too many, there was too many people around me. I didn't like how crowded it was, right? Disney obviously understands that they can limit this by, using the park pass system. They can control, how many people come into the park. But like I said, the side effect of that is that you're going to get people that get turned away at the gate, and they're always going to be mad because they're going to go, hey, I thought that I would be able to just walk in and do this, and you're telling me that I can't. So,
well, and from a business standpoint for them, they've said in the past too that when the crowds are less, guests are happier and guests spend more money. So they want people to feel like at least that it's less busy and they're not waiting for everything forever, right? Like that's such a big barrier for people to come and I've heard that from people like, just people like friends and people I've talked to is like, oh gosh, we went there one time and we waited in line forever for everything. And we're not doing that again. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of thing that they don't want to hear. So
yeah, there's definitely, I feel that they've discovered there is a sweet spot between, amount of money spent versus time spent on doing different things, right? Like, when it's really quiet, people aren't necessarily doing much of anything or spending money on anything because, when it's too quiet, actually you end up in a case where, people will go and hit all the rides and whatever and go, okay, well, I've done everything I wanted to do. Bye. Right. And then they don't
hang around and make, stupid purchases and
versus, that kind of in between where it's like, hey, I've spent, a couple of days here or whatever. Oh, I'm going to buy this thing because, I've got time to stop and think about it. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Disney wants you to impulse buy things. But in this speech that he was doing, he was talking about the park pass system and the virtual queues and that they're here to stay. I'm not surprised about the virtual queues. I didn't think that was going to go anywhere anytime soon. And in fact, I thought it was going to get more widespread. And that this patent kind of feeds into that, right?
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how they're going to apply it to the old rides. I guess will be the big thing because Rise of the Resistance was. It was built and they already had this in mind. It was clear that there was already this intent there as they were building it. But retrofitting it to older attractions is going to be interesting, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still don't believe that the park pass system is going to go on forever. I just don't believe that. So, I also kind of read what he said and I don't feel like he really said that it was going to go on forever, but the blogs take it that way.
Yeah. I feel it's going to be, just like everything, people will say, oh, that's going to be this way forever. Well, there was stuff that was happening back in the 90s and early 2000s that I don't even remember. Like, I'm trying to think, like when we went in 2003, there was, like with park tickets and stuff, they had a bunch of different options than they do now. Right. Like the point is it's like, you can't say that, this is the way it's going to be forever. Obviously for the foreseeable future, they're going to control it, but yeah, I feel it's going to get to a point and what it may be and I guess what people aren't necessarily extrapolating from what Bob Chapek said is that they may implement the park pass system for busier times. So it may turn into a flowing thing where, over spring break or over summer and Christmas and stuff like that, they'll use the park pass system because they know darn well, like Christmas is notorious for the parks hitting capacity.
Yeah.
And if they can head that off, if they can, level set people on the concept that, hey, you're not going to get in here unless you have a reservation. I think that'll go a long way towards, what you were saying about the overall park experience and people just not being mad because, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing this, but, hey, showing up on like New Year's Day or New Year's Eve rather at like 4 p.m. and being like, yeah, we're going to walk in the door and then, getting turned away, right? Like
exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I think they view it as a way to better manage the parks. And I think that's why they want to continue doing it. Right. So even once they're at 100% capacity, maybe they'll, that'll continue. I don't know. I just don't believe nothing's set in stone, right? Things change all the time. I mean, there were a lot of people that thought Disney was going to do masks and social distancing forever, and that went away in like a week. So everything kind of disappeared very quickly there. So
it'll be a thing until it's no longer a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So the last thing I had on here was just this cool Wonders of Life poster, which is probably already sold out by the time we're talking about it now.
Sorry. Oh yeah. Yeah. I love these posters, but once again, getting the stuff off of Shop Disney is such a pain in the butt for me.
For you, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's for you, it's tough. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, no, I like it though. I like the, they're definitely embracing the whole retro feel with the new Epcot logos and everything. Like they're kind of going back to original Epcot, I guess, instead of what
nostalgic Epcot.
Yeah, what we have now, I guess, would be called 90s Epcot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're getting away from 90s Epcot and going back to, like a more classic Epcot. And this poster definitely reflects that. So.
Yeah, and truthfully, by the time that this podcast comes out, actually, this is the last day to buy it is May 31st, which is the day that this episode comes out. So if you want one, go buy it. It's actually not sold out yet. I just pulled it up.
Yeah, hopefully it's not by Monday, but we make no guarantees.
Yeah, but exactly. But I do like it. It's cool. It's cool retro. I like that it has the dome on it. Wonders of Life is one of those few things that like I remember from being a kid. I distinctly remember being in that pavilion. From being a young kid. And so it's interesting. And it's got, the Body Wars vehicle on it. It's got Buzzy on it. It's got the cool DNA structure thing. So there's some cool stuff within this.
Unfortunately, I have no frame of reference for any of those things because I never got to go to Epcot as a child.
Oh, really?
So.
Oh, no.
Yeah. No, it's fine. You
have no nostalgia for those at all.
No, but it's like I said, it's still cool, and I understand where the feeling is with that, and yeah, obviously for you, it definitely resonates. For me, it'd be like if they released a Disneyland People Mover poster, like that would be my hype. Is I remember riding the People Mover in Disneyland, which doesn't exist anymore, and it's the same kind of thing, right? Like just that nostalgia for these old attractions and pavilions and stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I like the old Epcot stuff. I've talked about that on here before. I like the old school Epcot stuff. So, all right, well let's wrap this thing up. Look at that. We're actually fairly shorter than usual today this week. So
quiet weeks aren't bad. I think obviously with summer coming, Disney is they're ramping up for summer, and you're probably going to hear a lot more coming into the 50th here.
Yeah.
in the next couple of months, I'm sure there'll be a lot of announcements for us to talk about.
And we didn't talk about the commercial that they put out for the 50th because it's the first commercial they put out. They didn't really reveal anything. It's just,
it's purely a teaser. There's nothing there to really talk about.
Exactly. So I think there's going to be a lot more announcements coming. So
exactly.
And we'll talk about those things when they get announced.
Of course. So yeah, I guess let's to wrap it up. As usual, if you guys want to email us, you can always find us at welcomehomepodcast@gmail.com. Some of our listeners, as you heard at the beginning of the episode, sent us some great emails, and we love reading your emails, and obviously they sometimes get on the show. So make sure you guys reach out to us if you have any comments, questions, or just want to share a trip experience or something that you're doing. Outside of that, if you want to follow us on Facebook, you can follow us as Welcome Home Podcast. And there's also the Welcome Home Disney Waitlist Facebook group, which is our group. It's full of lots of great people with, we've got some good members there with good insight into Disney, and it's also fun and respectful. So make sure you guys, come and check that out, because I've said this before, there's lots of Disney groups out there, but ours might be one of the best. So I'll leave that up to you to decide if you want to come and check.
I like it. I enjoy
it. Yeah. And as usual, we have a YouTube channel, which is called Welcome Home Podcast, as well as an Instagram, which is Welcome Home Pics. Those, make sure you follow those, because those are the platforms that we do try to use when we do trips. So, Tom used Instagram for his last trip, and as we get back to going more regularly, we'll try to make sure that there's more content on those areas for you guys to check out. Last but not least is the store, which is store.welcomehomepodcast.com. You can find mugs and t-shirts and stuff on there of our logo. As Damon posted in the group, for anyone wondering, we do have that new t-shirt coming, but we're trying to just figure out some stuff on the back end with
vendors,
with a vendor. Yeah. So stay tuned for that. If you want a Haunted River Country shirt, it's looking really cool, guys. I hope that everyone listening is as excited as we are about it. So stay tuned for that. And last but not least, if you guys are listening on iTunes or actually any other service where you can leave a review, please do. We do see those reviews, and we obviously comment on them from time to time. We prefer the 5-star reviews. Obviously some people don't like certain aspects of the show, but and that's entirely your choice. But the only thing we ask is, constructive feedback is the best thing for us.
Yeah, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to Welcome Home Podcast so you can be reminded every time we release a new episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, just about any place you can find podcasts. You can find us. Just search for Welcome Home. Look for the one that says DVC and Disney, where we should be there. Just a reminder to our listeners, Welcome Home Podcast is for entertainment only. We are not employed by the Walt Disney Company, and as such, all opinions we express on the show are our own, so please consult a DVC representative or a Disney cast member for any information, any more information about anything we talked about today. Huge thank you to DVC Rental Store for sponsoring this episode and continuing to be a partner of ours. Please check them out to rent DVC points or rent out your DVC points. Join us next time for more Disney Parks discussion, of course, more DVC talk. We hope to see you all real soon.
This is Skipper Albert Awol, the voice of the jungle, signing off from Welcome Home Podcast on the DVC.
Do a huddle when we hit a chair. How she can cuddle is no